Hi again, everybody. It's Kevin Knesset coming to you from the newsroom of The Observer, excuse me, and theobserver.com. Geez, I couldn't have timed that worse. On this, the 21st day of March in the year 2023. Hang on for 1 second, everybody. Geez, I took a too deep a breath on that one, so sorry about that. Hope you're all enjoying your Monday, no matter where it is you are in the country. And as we kick off today's broadcast, I want to say hello to Carmen de Jesus, our dear friend here in New Jersey. And of course, my dear uncle, Mike Slane, out in Carlsbad, California, where he is, I'm sure, enjoying the beautiful weather of paradise in the San Diego metropolitan area out in California. You lucky devil. And of course, he is preparing for the playoffs like I am. He is a big Ranger fan, I a Devil fan, so we may have a nice little matchup in the first round between our two teams. So we will see what comes of that. And I'm always grateful for you being here, Uncle, and to you too as well, Carmen. So, as you do every Tuesday afternoon, you welcome me into your home so that I can bring you this week's newspaper. And we're going to start off with something a little bit different this week. And I'm going to tell you a little story about Lonnie Bunch. And you may have heard this already because I have discussed it with you before. 1 year ago, believe it or not, to the day, I interviewed Lonnie Bunch. He is the secretary of the Smithsonian Institute in Washington, D.C. And Lonnie was born in 1952 on Beach Street in Belleville, New Jersey. And Lonnie has gone on to accomplish some amazing things, most notably, obviously, as the secretary of the Smithsonian. And he is a wonderful human being. And I got a chance to not meet him, but I interviewed him on the phone 1 year ago to the day, yesterday. And what a gem he is. And for years, Belleville Mayor Michael Melham has been hoping to bring Mr. Bunch back to Belleville and honor him. And he was hoping to do it in February during Black History Month, but that never actually came to fruition. But yesterday at noon, Lonnie Bunch was back in Belleville on Beach Street and Greylock Parkway. He grew up at 125 Beach Street in Belleville. And the street intersection right there was renamed for him. That's Lonnie right on the left of your screen. If you're looking at the screen, that's him right there. And he spent the first 17 years of his life in Belleville. And it wasn't always easy. He is a black man who grew up in a town that isn't exactly noted for being, at least back then, very welcoming. And I think the mayor made that pretty clear that we are well past the errors of our ways because Belleville is now a beautiful, diverse town. And, Mr. Bunch spoke for a few minutes, and he once told a story that has stuck with me, I think, over the years. And I told it last week, and it bears repeating again today. And it's this. When he was about 15 years old, he was playing baseball in Belleville on DeWitt Avenue. And one day when the baseball game was over, Lonnie was doing what he normally does and getting ready to walk home. But for whatever the reason this time, the group of kids, every single one of whom was white at the time, decided to chase after him and go after him. And they began running after him for a great length of time, I guess, and he kept running and running and running and running. And eventually, Lonnie got to a place where he collapsed to the ground, and he couldn't really take it anymore. It got so bad that he was ready to collapse, and he eventually just collapsed to the ground. Remarkably at that time, he said he just gave up. At this point, he had had enough, and he was going to stop, and he was not going to try to outrun these kids anymore. and he dropped to the ground. And while he was on the ground, the kids were right behind him, and there was this young girl who may have been no more than 8 years of age. 8 years of age. And while this happened, he decided that he was going to surrender, and she said, "Get off my property." She screamed it, "Get off my property. Get off my property." And he feared that the reason she was saying, "Get off my property," was because she wanted Lonnie to leave the area. But guess what? It wasn't Lonnie. She was talking to the 5 or 6 white children who were chasing after Lonnie from the park to get to that area. That was who he was. That's who she was trying to get off the property. And Lonnie said, to this day, that has stuck with him because he just didn't ever think that that was the ending that he was going to be faced with. He thought for sure he was going to get beat up that day, but he didn't. And instead, the message stuck with him for the longest time that you can't judge a book by its cover. And that's what he did. And because of that, it changed his life. And he went on to do some incredible things, including starting the first African-American museum in Washington, D.C. with President Barack Obama. And he's been appointed now to the Smithsonian. He was appointed by President Trump, and he was kept on by President Biden. And he's worked under the auspices of President George H.W. Bush, President Clinton, President Reagan, President who am I forgetting? The second President Bush as well, and President Obama, who I mentioned earlier. So he has done a bipartisan job of excellence in Washington, D.C. over his career, and now he has something named after him, and that is what you see right now on the screen, Lonnie G. Bunch III Way, which you can see if you drive past Heller Parkway in Belleville and get to the intersection of Beach Street. It's a remarkable sight. It really is. And he was in town yesterday with his mother, his brother, and his wife. His father, unfortunately, is no longer with us, and his father was an educator. And he gives a lot of credit to his wife and his dad for all the influence that they gave him over their time together in Belleville. But I remember he said when he was 17 years old, he couldn't wait to get the hell out of Belleville. And now he finds that all he can look forward to is coming back to Belleville and visiting. And that's a stark reminder of how the society has changed and how he himself has changed. But we congratulate him. We honor him for this special street naming. It's a very, very rare opportunity, something Councilman Steve Rovell, who is in this picture here, I'm going to blow it up so you can see this. I want you to be aware of this. And of course, I can't get it bigger. It won't zoom. But Councilman Rovell, who was a good friend of Bunch's in the beginning when they were young, made sure that this happened, and Mayor Michael Melham, along with Vinnie Cazzarelli, the councilman who's also in the photo, members of the council, made sure it happened. And I hope you get a chance to see him at some point. There are so many videos about him on YouTube. So if you ever get a chance, look it up, Lonnie Bunch, and he is just a great guy. And now he's got a street named after him in Belleville, and it is a very, very, very well-deserved honor. So there's the front page from this week. Bunch comes home, and, you know, when you consider that he didn't want to come back to Belleville at first, and now he loves coming back to Belleville, it tells an amazing story. As we move on, I want to tell you a story a little bit about Anthony DePeta. I never heard this story until last week, but Anthony DePeta was a member of the United States Navy, and on September the 10th, 1944, he was killed in action in the Pacific Southwest. And for years, from 1944, when the plane was shot down, until 1949, it was presumed he was missing, would never be found. and it is just a remarkable, remarkable thing that his remains were found on January 3rd, 2023, over 78 years after his presumed death. And he never had a proper burial. His family in Nutley never had a chance to say goodbye, and his descendants who came after him never had a chance to bury him properly. But his remains will be returned, and he will, in fact, receive a proper burial now, 78 years after he was killed in action during the Second World War on the 10th day of September in the year 1944. Uncle, I think you're going to have to refresh your browser. I don't think that we're having any audio issues. If there's anybody out there else who's watching, please let us know, but I don't think so. And we welcome in Henry Atwell as well. Henry, thank you very much. I am feeling much better. To anybody who may be wondering, after my minor stroke incident a couple of weeks ago, I have not felt this well in 20 years. And I am happy to say that it is now, I think, 21 days or 20 days since I've had a cigarette, and I can't be happier about that. Never again will that happen. But that's the story of Anthony DePetta. And, I was talking to Mike Perrone about this yesterday, the president of the Belleville Historical Society, and he said he had never heard of this story either. And then to know that his remains were found 78 years later because they were able to do dental records and things of that nature. What a story. What a story. And what a remarkable feat of science that they're able to do that so many years after. Now, the next story I'm going to talk to you about briefly is a pretty unfortunate one, but it came to us pretty late over the weekend, Sunday into Monday, and it's about a gentleman whose name is Sam Carrasco. He's 20 years old. He lives in Kearny and purports to have a Wilson Avenue address in the town of Kearny. And let me just give you an idea, a little bit of what's going on with Mr. Carrasco. He was arrested by the feds along with one other defendant from Queens after allegedly basically kidnapping an Uber driver, holding him at gunpoint, taking $20,000 in cash off of this guy, and then threatening to kill him if he didn't keep his mouth shut. And he was arrested a couple of days ago after, and in addition to this, he also had a stolen car. So he was on the radar of the NYPD already and the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. So this 20-year-old guy who lives in Kearny was arrested Friday on St. Patrick's Day in the town of Kearny. And when he was arrested, I believe it was the feds who picked him up. I don't think there was any connection to local law enforcement. When they went into his apartment on Wilson Avenue and searched it and got to the mattress, they found a loaded handgun on this guy. And, it's pretty remarkable that this is right in our midst, right in the first ward here in the town of Kearny. So Mr. Carrasco is behind bars now, along with his co-defendant, and he has been remanded to remain behind bars through the duration of his trial or plea agreement whenever that happens. He faces 12 to 15 years behind bars. The affidavit that the feds submitted also said that he was making attempts to buy with stolen credit cards and stolen cash thousands of dollars of jewelry on that online retailer. And he was going to have the jewelry delivered to an address also on Wilson Avenue in Kearny, but one that was not his. So if you can imagine, this is not the brightest guy in the world, and he certainly is not a good human being at all. That he had in his possession this loaded handgun, and this poor Uber driver. This guy's just looking to get people from point A to point B in Queens, and this man who lives in Kearny held a gun to his head, put a black bag over his head too, by the way, And I'm sure that's not comfortable. You get a bag put over your head of any kind. It's very, very hard to breathe. And they basically told him, all right, when they finally, what happened was the suspect, not the suspect, the victim here told the police, not the police. I am really having a struggle today, but he told the guy who he kidnapped that he wanted money, and so he admitted that he had cash at the house, and they went to the house and they got 20,000, and then he said to the victim, "If you say a word, I'm going to kill you and your family. I'm going to kill you and your family." So we're not dealing with the nicest person in the world here. We're not dealing with the brightest person in the world, but that's exactly what happened. And fortunately, the feds have put him behind bars where he will stay for a long time if he is convicted. And I'm glad that he was put on remand. The feds basically said if this guy gets out, he's going to flee and he's going to commit the crimes again. But what I think is the scariest of all of this is that he was right in our backyard, mile and a half away from where I'm sitting at this very moment. Some of you who are watching this right now may even be a neighbor of Sam Carrasco, age 20. Just remember, he lived on Wilson Avenue, and he is probably the lowest of the low. So keep that in mind. You just never know in certain neighborhoods where you're going to find things and find people who do crazy things, but Sam Carrasco certainly did. But thank goodness he is now behind bars, and I think it's fair to say that is exactly where he should be. One last thing I want to mention today, and that is that our old friend Tom McKeon, who has been a judge in Kearny since 1990 on and off, has retired from his judgeship and will continue to practice law, but he will no longer be a judge in the town of Kearny. Tom McKeon was as dedicated a servant in Kearny as anybody I've ever known. He is such a level-headed, mild-mannered, fair human being, and it's going to be very, very hard to replace him on the bench. And I've known him personally for a long time, and I'm glad that I do know him because every time I see him, he's got a biting sense of humor, sarcastic sense of humor, and you just sometimes never know whether he's serious or whether he's joking, but that is how cunning he can be at times, and I'm going to miss him. I'm not going to miss him necessarily, though, because he's really still going to be around, but he just won't be on the bench anymore, but he will continue to practice law and I'm sure travel with his wife and do some great things. But we say to you, Tom McKeon, bravo for your incredible work. Congratulations on a tremendous career, and we wish you nothing but the very best. And in closing, before I forget, and we welcome in our dear friend Carol Manley, my birthday sister. We were both born on September 21st. Always a pleasure to see Carol. John Dowie, the retired chief of police, has had the Policeman of the Year award named after him. And I think this is great because you want to know something? John Dowie is never the kind of guy who goes out looking for praise for himself, but he will go out and praise anybody he can if it's worthy. And finally, I shouldn't say finally, but now, the Valor Committee decided to bestow upon him the honor of naming it the John P. Dowie Police Officer of the Year Award. So every year when it's time to give out the Cop of the Year Award, John Dowie's name will be mentioned in it. And it is so well deserved. He was chief for 19 years or 18 years, I believe. 1998 until 2017, so that's 19 years. And he was a patrolman before that, and he climbed up the ranks. John Dowie is a great human being, and so we say to John, congratulations for the incredible work that you did as the chief, and we are very happy that he got this named after him. It's very, very well deserved. Please read the story when you get a chance. There's so many great stories that he tells in his recap of becoming the man who the award is named after. Now, don't forget, Jason Bernstein has sports, and of course, there are 2 pages of classified. So if you need a place to live or you need a job or anything like that, we have got you covered. So check those out on pages 16 and 17. And then, of course, if anything happens during the course of the week, we will join you with any breaking news that comes about. But that's going to do it for today. I want to thank each and every one of you for logging on and joining me. Carol Manley, thank you. Carmen, Henry, Uncle Mike, thank you. I don't think I missed it. Oh, Denise. Denise, yes. Denise Pabs is here, too. I'm sorry, Denise. I didn't get a chance to say hello to you before. It's always good to see you, and it's always a pleasure. And I love you, Uncle, and I love you all, really. Okay? So from the newsroom of The Observer and TheObserver.com, Kevin Canessa signing off for now, and we hope to see you back here again very, very soon. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday, everybody. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.